right?
Yeah, we are live.
Almost gave the second slide. And this is the place you go if you're afraid to fly, if you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or if you just like to talk about airplanes and find out what really goes on behind the scenes there with the real live pilots, or used to be pilots, and an active flight attendant, and our trusty person that keeps our feet to the fire and keeps us honest, Dieter Staudinger. So we had Dieter and Diane again, and Eric here tonight. So good evening, everybody. We're glad you came to join us tonight. First thing we want to do is welcome you to the show, and invite you, if you haven't already joined our Facebook Live group called Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. We encourage you to do that. And the link is there. My link doesn't show up all the way. Does yours? Maybe it's just my screen. So
I'm seeing it. So
okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's also in the description of the video. So
perfect. So that's the place you go. And when you get over there, tell us a little about yourself. Checked in there, and you can both get information and leave information if you've got some experiences and some relevant things to that have happened to you, or you got questions about your fear of flying. Anyway, we're up over 600 last count. I haven't looked for a while, actually. I shouldn't admit that over the year. So with that,
that's okay.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to the show for tonight. We've got a pretty good show lined up for you, I believe. We got a little bit of facts.
I wanna just acknowledge 3 of our Birds of a Feather members. Michelle Villa, thanks for posting and being in the group. Jim and Maria Luna. Hey, Maria. It's great to have you guys with us, and thanks for being in the Facebook group as well. And tonight, there we go. Ron?
Okay, so we got a poll question tonight. Do you know what learned helplessness is? We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. So if you didn't know before you got here, you will when you get done. And it's an interesting topic. It's been around for since the 70s, almost 50 years. And it's led to some revelations about human behavior. And I think it has relevance to being a fearful flyer. So we're going to talk about that and let you decide. And then we have a bit of an aviation news roundup. We got a little bit, of course, related to COVID-19. And Diane has a kind of a warm chicken soup for the soul type story that we're going to close this with. So you may need some tissue by you when you get done there. So we hope if we do it right here. So, okay, so let me take over the controls here. I'll share, and hopefully we'll get the correct.
And I want to say hi to Mary. Hi, Mary. It's great to see you guys coming on. And yeah, please make sure that you share whether or not you're familiar with learned helplessness. That's a really critical concept. Ron?
And I think I did it right. I think we made a flawless transition.
Yeah, see your share.
Oh my gosh, who would have thunk it? So learned helplessness. And this, if this doesn't make sense to you right now, it will in a minute. Nothing I do makes a difference. So that'll help tune up your mind for that. So have you ever noticed in the travel, in your fearful flyer travels, that you find yourself saying, it's just no use. I'm never going to get over my fear. Why can't I be like all the other passengers? Which is often repeated when people look out over the rest of the crowd in the cabin. If anyone knew how crazy I felt, I'd be so embarrassed, and I've tried everything and nothing works. So all those statements fall into the category and may indicate an underlying feeling of hopelessness and what we'll call learned helplessness. And nobody would consciously learn that. So we'll talk about the evolution of that. The origins of learning about this or studying about this came from a guy named Martin Seligman, who started some research on learned helplessness way back in 1967 at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a very esteemed psychologist. He was the president of the National Psychological Association, and he pioneered what we now call happiness psychology. And his goal was he wanted to learn about the basis for depression. So in part one, he put together this study. In part one of this study, he got 3 groups of dogs that were placed in harnesses. And as I go through this, if you're a dog lover, like I am now, don't get spooked. They can't do this anymore because of the new ethical guidelines that have come into play over the years. And they weren't trying to be cruel, but you know, that's the old days, as we call them. Anyway, he had three groups.
Disclaimer, Ron. Yeah, this test was not performed by Ron for validation.
There you go. There you go.
Obviously was not performed in California either. Press on.
So like any study, they wanted to come up with control groups and then the experimental groups. So they divided the dogs into 3 groups. And the group in the first part, group 1 dogs were simply put in a harness for a period of time just to give them the feeling of being confined and restricted. And then they were later released. So that's all they did to the group 1 dogs. And so they became the control group. Now, groups 2 and 3 consisted of yoked pairs. So not only did they have them in harnesses, but they were harnessed together, not so that they couldn't move, but so that one couldn't get away from the other one here. All right. And so the dogs in group 2, so picture a group of dogs called group 2 and a group of dogs group 3, and they're linked together. And the dogs in group 2 were given electric shocks at random times, which the dog could end by pressing a lever, kind of like the old Pavlov's dog tests way back in the early part of the 20th century, where Pavlov did all these experiments with giving dogs treats and having them teaching them certain behavior. So the dogs in group 2 were given an electric shot at random times, and they could stop it by pressing a lever. All right. Now, each dog in group 3, which was paired with a group 2 dog, whenever a group 2 dog got a shock, its paired dog in group 3, right, the pair, got a shock of the same intensity, and it lasted the same length of time, but its lever did not work. So he tried to do the lever and replicate what the other dog was doing, but there was no relief from it. So it just kept shocking him. And what appeared to that dog, at least what everybody concluded, was it was random and it was beyond his control. So to those dogs in group 3, it seemed like the shock ended at random times because it was their paired dog in group 2 that was causing it to stop. So they couldn't make that connection. So for the group 3 dogs, the shock was inescapable. Okay, and that's really critical to what we're going to talk about here. So as I said, the dogs in group 3, the shock was inescapable because they couldn't stop it no matter what they did. So eventually what they did, they moved on to part 2 with these same groups of dogs. Okay. So they developed a shuttle box, and that's kind of a schematic of it there. So on one side, the floor, they could induce a shock. And the dog, for dogs in group 1 and group 2, they would just, as soon as they got the shocks in a short period of time, they would jump over the little fence in the middle to a side where there was no shock. And all the group 1 and 2 dogs quickly learned the task of how to escape the shock. But when they put dogs from group number 3 in there, they just gave up. They didn't even attempt to get out of it because they had already had the experience and they had learned hopelessness. And so that was the early research on that. Let me see if I say So in that second experiment later that year, let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Oh, so one of the things about research is the scientific method. You're really trying to replicate the studies that are produced, and then you're trying to prove it wrong or find flaws in the study. So there were some scientists that speculated, some psychologists speculated that maybe there was something about the dog's behavior that they learned, even though it wasn't intentional on part of that. So what they did a third trial with the group, with the dogs, where they gave them curare to paralyze them, and underwent a procedure similar to that for the group 1 dogs, where they just had them harnessed there and they didn't do anything to them. And what they concluded with that was it ruled out the fact that there was any interference hypothesis, is what they called it. Okay, so that validated that the fact that what they had in fact seen was legitimate, that the dogs in group number 3 had learned helplessness. From these experiments, it was thought that there was to be only one cure for helplessness. And in Seligman's hypothesis is the dogs didn't try to escape because they expect that nothing that they will do will stop the shock. And to change this expectation, experimenters physically picked up the dogs and moved their legs. These are dogs in all 3 groups, in group number 3, and replicated the actions that the dogs would need to take in order to escape from the electrified grid. And they only had to do this a couple of times, and the dogs picked right up on it and did it. So this further validated that there was something that they chose to call learned helplessness. In contrast, so threats, rewards, and observed demonstrations had no effect on the helpless dogs in group number 3. Then there was a lady, or one psychologist, again at Penn State. This is where Martin Seligman had done all of his work, and I think he was actually one of the people that supervised people like Sharice Nixon here. This was a Penn State psychology professor, and we have a video here that we're going to play, which says this far more than me. So after watching the part with the dogs, as with anything, big deal. You can teach dogs to be helpless. What's that have to do with people? And remember, in the back of their minds, or at least one of the goals for Seligman was to see what maybe underlied some of the feelings of depression that people would get. And so this is a video coming up of the Penn State psychology professor speaking to a classroom of students, recorded for something called the Ophelia Project, which is a program put together by scientists and educational professionals to try to work on the issue of girls that were bullied. So in the background of your mind, you can just think about what she's doing is she's trying to get information and data to support the same kind of phenomenon with the dogs, to see if you can induce helplessness in a group of people. And like most studies, who did they use? Usually college sophomores. That's what most of the data is driven by. So with that, Dieter, if you can show the video.
Yep, when you stop your share.
Okay, I just gotta find it, and there you go. Okay.
And okay, so that drum roll, let's see.
Biggest fear for an adolescent is written all the way throughout this text. The biggest fear of an adolescent, just
well, we were doing well for a while.
Yeah, I think it might be a buffering issue here, but I can.
not fitting in.
There we go.
Is not fitting in. You talked about acceptance. Now, to understand how this happens and how this looks and what this feels like, I'm going to have you do an activity. This is an on-your-own activity, and just this is not to tax you. These are easy things. This is just to kind of get you feeling what we're going to go over. So everybody, if you would take out a short piece of paper. I'm going to pass out these papers, and just keep them face down. And if you would, no one write on these, write on your own papers. keep them face down? Everybody have one? If you would, just do them one at a time, and I will tell you when to do them. Everybody turn it over. Just do your own work. And this isn't meant to be hard. These are anagrams. Just do the first one only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word. When you're done, I need to see your hand raised. Okay, keep going. We'll wait. Keep your hands up, please.
I think it's buffering again, right, Dieter?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Just do number one. Don't go on. Don't go on. This isn't meant to be difficult. Okay, put your hands down. Let's just.
Great. There's a little pause. So just to kind of clarify, what happened is she's given a list out there. What they don't know is one half the class has a different set of words. Okay. And so that's why they showed it to them. So that, and you'll notice when she says, raise your hand right away. So on one half of the class, she barely tells them to come up with an anagram solution of that. Everybody's hand goes up. On the other half of the class, they're like, I don't think so. Okay, and so if we can get it to play again, otherwise I'll just finish it verbally here.
Don't even worry about number one. Go to number two, solve that one. Again, when you're done, I want to see your hands up.
Notice the dumb side of the room.
Everybody's hands down. We're going to go ahead and do number three. For number three, rearrange the letters, and as soon as you do, go ahead and put your hand up.
Okay, now notice there's some people on the other side of the room that have got their hand up.
Here's what you need to know. You were both given two different lists. This side of the room was given these three words. And left side of the room, here you go. They were given bat. What would the word be? The second one, they were given lemon. Brian, the word? Melon. They were easy. The trick here was both of you were given the third word, which was the same. The third word was cinerama, which was American. Your first two words on this side of my classroom were not solvable. They were impossible tasks. I'm sorry. I know, but here's what we did this for. I was able to induce something called learned helplessness in the left side of the room very easily within about 5 minutes. I want you to think about what happened to you, this left side of the room, when you saw the right side of the room raising their hands because they already had the task done. What happened to you during that time? Jory?
I felt stupid.
You felt stupid? Okay.
I felt rushed.
Felt rushed? Joelle?
I was even more confused.
You were even more confused because they all got it and you were still struggling. Chelsea?
Frustrated.
Frustrated. What happened by the time you got to the third word? Because I'm here to tell you, this side of the room is not significantly more intelligent than this side of the room. That was a random assignment. So what happened to show the differences? Why did you have more of a difficult time with the third word, which was the exact same word? Brian?
My confidence was shot.
What you experienced was a term called learned helplessness. How many have heard of the term before? Let me see your hands. Learned helplessness is often used in the academic literature to mean what? Jory?
Basically, they fail once or can't do something one time, and then they apply that to everything in the future, so all the future applications become skewed by that learned helplessness.
And here's the thing, and this is what I want everybody to understand. It's usually only used in the academic research. You'll see it in ed psych books. You'll see it in school textbooks when they talk about learning. But I'm going to challenge us to think about how learned helplessness can act.
Well, we almost made it all the way
Ah.
through.
Well,
I
hold
think we
on.
got the point.
Yeah.
Actually apply.
Yeah, I think so too. It's
Yeah, that's okay. We can just move on to that. And so now I want you out there, if you're watching the video, either the show either live or via the replay, I want you to think about the last time that you thought about flying, or that you got on the airplane and you immediately noticed that they were about to close the door, and you looked around and you saw everybody out there and you immediately thought, oh my God, how I feel so helpless, so stupid, so powerless. I'm here frightened and everybody else is doing so well. Okay. So to me, it's a no-brainer that this is what goes on with about half to 60% of the fearful flyers. Actually more than that, because this encompasses both people who get triggered mechanically by fears about the survivability or the airworthiness of the airplane, and by those who are more emotional, who just get caught up by the thoughts of claustrophobia or being trapped inside the airplane. So
Ron, can I interject something here? It's my only
Please.
contribution for the day.
Okay.
It's all I could do not to laugh hysterically thinking about the pilot parallels for those two groups, or the dogs in 1, 2, and 3. Once you start flying, your main thrust for your whole career, whether you're a flight attendant or a pilot, is to mess with your schedule. Constant bidding, constant trading, constantly doing deals. And just like dogs 1, 2, and 3, part of it's driven by seniority. The real senior guys always get what they want, but the sharp guys get what they want too. The middle of the pack are like the dog that got shocked that could stop it. They learn not to drink when they're bidding anymore. They learn not to do it at 4 in the morning the day before they do it, because it's going to blow up in their face. I mean, they have some control over not messing it up. And group 3 and we've flown with group 3 guys. It doesn't matter what they do. Their life is so miserable, they're not even going to try. The only difference is, instead of being like dog number 3 laying down in the corner of the box and getting shocked, pilot number 3 tells the other guy about it for the whole trip so he can make him just as miserable as he is. Is that not true? I'm not making that up. It's exactly the same.
That is true. However, it might not be so one-to-one. Let me take that and embellish it just a little bit. Okay. Another thing that happens with pilots is sometimes we get paired up with somebody that we just don't get along with that well. And if he happens to be in the position of leadership, typically, he can be somebody who's not fun and people bid around him. And it goes like this. You get in the airplane, you're competent, he's competent. But all of a sudden he gives good duel, we used to say, as if he was an instructor. He thinks he's got to tell you everything about how to do your job and correct you all along the way. And you will find that we have people who then give up, if you will, in the right seat. And when that happens, it's not like they give up flying. What they give up is considering themselves the most important backup system on the airplane, which is the second pilot. And so when we look back now over 50 years into aviation, and we looked at how we looked at things called human factors, which you've heard me talk about before. Why in about 2/3 of the cases was the airplane operable when it crashed? And oftentimes it was a case of kind of a learned helplessness situation where the one pilot had doubts about what the other pilot was doing, and he chose not to say anything out of fear of intimidation or some kind of punishment or something like that. So there is a relevance to that. And all of us as human beings, who hasn't worried about doing something, and doing it, with incompetence or something like that, so that you hold back, or growing up in families where you have parenting that's really not all that great, and kids don't get the affirmation and the modeling and the support that they need. And the big thing out of this is the most relevant applications for this whole theory about learned helplessness now is depression and things like fear of flying. And so we do we have any comments before I move on?
Yeah,
Bill?
there's a lot of so Eric, you clearly nailed it and translated it into a language that a lot of us can really appreciate and relate to. So thank you for that. We got a lot of laughter there. But in general, the topic of learned helplessness is a new one for a lot of the viewers. So I think that's a really good start to that. And I want to just, one of my favorite learned helplessness examples is actually from a Canadian researcher, George Seeley. And he had the incredible fortune to interview two brothers. And those two brothers had very, very, very different lives. One was an alcoholic. The other one was a very enthusiastic and inspired, person helping young people and, getting like a fresh start in life. And what was unique was that George Seeley found out they both had the same father who was an alcoholic. And when he interviewed them, both responded with the exact same answer. And the answer was, well, with a father like that, what do you expect? Right? So one alcoholic father, two completely different lives, just absolutely incredible. And so a lot of that power, we're trying to really bring that into helping you overcome your fear of flying, because a lot of those same patterns are in effect, like Ron was teaching with the learned helplessness. So,
and lucky for everybody, as we are going to be talking more about some of the basics in psychology, about things interesting like that. What happens when twins are separated at birth and they don't do that? So that's a great segue to that coming up.
Ron, I should say, it's good that you brought that up when I finished. I mean, I was making light of it, but what you talked about with crew communications and crew resource management and all that kind of stuff, where they get the crews or they communicate and work training scenarios where if they don't communicate, it doesn't work out, and all kinds of focus on that the last 10, 15, and 20 years, with a tremendous improvement in accidents rates as all the airlines and companies realize the importance of that, and specifically focusing on guys that are intimidated or Captain Never Wrong. Captain Never Wrong, we need to chat you up a little bit about your skills with the other people, kind of thing. And if the airline notices over time that a lot of airlines have a deal where the first officer can opt not to fly with a person, and if the airline notices after a while that the Captain Never Wrong has a list of several hundred people that don't want to fly with them, they're not going to bother the first officer anymore. They're gonna bring Mr. Personality in and chat him up about maybe he could change his technique in the cockpit a little, and it's probably saved a lot of accidents and a lot of lives.
And a lot of heated arguments, because that was the question from Susan Miglagio. She said, what about heated arguments? And I'm sure she's trying to get some juicy stories out of you, Ron.
Well, the heated arguments is a good point. And at least with a heated argument, you have engagement. What happens is, the worst case is when the person doesn't even argue anymore. And so, so it is a kind of a bullying. And again, thanks to Eric for bringing that up, because this is something that transcends all humanness, is the whole concept. We all, who doesn't have a time in their life when they get discouraged because things have gone wrong all day, and it hasn't expressed, at least inwardly, well, it doesn't matter what I do, it's all going to turn to fluff, here. But so we all have that, and there's another term for it too. It's when we get into victim thinking. We feel like a victim, like life is happening to us rather than for us. And so, but this is I just really, when I first started reading about this, I didn't put up here as a resource. We'll try to put it in the guide. The fellow that started all this whole ball movement here was, as I mentioned, named Martin Seligman, and he has a book called Learned Optimism. And it plays on the studies that he talked about. And there's actually an online version of this little quiz that you can take, which is fascinating. And there's 3 elements of optimism. And I think you'd all find it interesting. So we'll put it in the notes, and we may even talk about that down the road. So to kind of pull this all together, if Dieter wants to put the slide number 15 there, this is just a cheap effort to show my dog again. So that you get, and it will play into Diane here. Oh, maybe Dieter.
Just give me a second.
Okay.
I just gotta get the right slide up.
He said he had to go down to the hamburger store and get a hamburger.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't think he'd leave before the show was over. There you go. I did not stage that. That little guy used to get up on my couch behind here, and that's him. Just, I mean, come on, man. We just wanted to show that there are some dogs that weren't abused and all that. Anyway, so all right. So the closing thing that we want to talk about in here is, and we have a slide that comes right out of our book called. I just reiterated those things. So if you find yourself making statements like, I've done everything I can, everything I try, nothing helps and all that, you may be indicating, it may be an indicator that you have a touch of that. And what's the cure? The cure is what we call awareness, choice, and experiences, so that it spells ACE. What it really means is you have to increase your awareness. And you've heard me say this over and over and over again. You have to learn something new. If you get stuck in life, certainly if you have a bout with learned helplessness, there's something else out there for you to learn, because you don't need to get stuck there. And the benefit then is, once you increase your awareness, you now become aware of choices that you did not know that you even had probably beforehand. And if you really want to change, and in this case, change the way you think about flying and change your experiences, you follow our ACE format and increase your awareness, find other choices, and make different choices to get past that. So that's the little bit that we wanted to talk about with learned helplessness for the night. Our aviation news roundup, we had a couple of things. One was this was an article I saw. It had 4 ways to help you get rid of your fear flying during the pandemic. Yeah, not so much. I'm not even going to talk about the 4 ways. That was kind of lame, actually. It was kind of to get your thing. But what wasn't so lame about that was that there was a little bit of data in there from the IATA, the International Air Transport Association. And here's it. They have 44 identified potential cases of flight-related transmissions of COVID virus and that's spread out over 1.2 billion travelers. So if you divide that out, that's one case in every 27 million travelers. Now, they said, like many of you say, well, yeah, but I'll be one of those. They said, let's say we were overly exaggerating the numbers there. Let's just say that we exaggerated by 90%. So just 10% of that, what they came up with, that would mean that there was one case of COVID-19 in every 2.7 million travelers. And so that brings it down, and that supports what we've been telling you for the past few weeks, is you're far less likely to get the COVID-19 on an airplane. And after seeing Delta's third quarter profits or P&L statement today, they lost $5.8 billion in the third quarter. That tells you that they can't do that forever, because a billion here and a billion there, and pretty soon you've got real money. So we're not getting paid by the airlines to encourage you to fly, but we do want to encourage you to fly, to get over your fear of flying, because there's no reason that you should be stuck grounded there. So I was talking with the crew here, and Diane said, I had this really, really cool experience this week. So Diane, tell us all about yet another dog story.
Another dog story.
Not a shaggy one either. So.
No, this is a real one. This is a real dog story. It was my 4-day trip, the very last flight of my 4-day trip. And we were coming back into Phoenix, and I was in my jump seat in the back. And I had noticed that our flights were full. And so full for us is there's only 2 seats which are blocked, and that's in the very last row, the 2 aisle seats by our jump seats in the aft part of the aircraft. And there was a very young woman who it was sitting in that last row by the window. And I had noticed her. She was very quiet, and the flight wasn't really long, but she was real quiet. But as I was sitting there and we were in preparation for landing, as I looked over at her, she looked a cross between sad and a little anxious. And I'm a grandma, and my heart kind of went out to her because she looked like she was under a little bit of stress just from the expression on her face. But she had her phone out, and as I looked over as to what she was looking at, she had pictures and short video clips of a dog. And it was a darling little puppy. And there were a couple of also pictures and short video clips of a kitty cat. And so I reached out to her and I looked over and I said, gosh, I said, excuse me. I said, but I couldn't help but notice you've got great pictures of a puppy dog. And I said, tell me, is that your dog? Her expression she really lit up. She smiled and she started telling me about her dog and her kitty, and showed me more pictures. And we started chatting, and we chatted more about where she lived, why she was traveling from the cities that she was that day. And throughout the entire conversation, I could see her demeanor change. She really did lighten up. And so as we landed, and of course I had to go through the specifics that I have to do as a flight attendant when we land. And as everyone was deplaning, we still chatted a little bit. I had gotten, of course, my phone out so I could show her pictures of my kitty cats. And that continued our conversation. And as she got up and left, she looked at me with a very wonderful and warm smile. And she said, and she had expressed earlier that she was a little anxious about flying. It was only her second or third time on an aircraft. But she looked at me, she said, thank you for talking to me. And of course, I'm going to do it right now, but I just got all kind of teary-eyed. And so for those of you who are not afraid to fly, or if you are a little anxious about doing it, just connecting. Ron and Eric and Dieter constantly talk about this, is connect with the person who's sitting next to you. Start off by connecting with the flight attendant and the pilots if you can, if there's time, and then certainly try to connect with your seatmate and just start up a conversation that will help distract you. And you never know, that might help distract them. They may be concerned and anxious about flying as well. And so just to let you know, that just was a small heartwarming tale about a very short conversation and the effect that can have. You never know how you might change someone's day just by being kind.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. And one of the consequences of learned helplessness is also to withdraw and to isolate. So that's another downside of that. So because the way it is referred to as learned helplessness, it implies that you can unlearn it, which you really can. So use our ACE model. If you haven't done anything, you don't know where to go, take a look at the book, How to Overcome Your Fear of Flying. Stick with us. We're getting our online act together here thanks to the COVID-19 virus, and we hope that we make a difference in your lives and anyone else that you should run into and tell them about Fearless Flight. So with that, let's say goodnight to everybody on behalf of the crew and me. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you back here again next week for Fearless Flight Live. Have a great week and stay safe.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.